The system assigns you a confidential internal review with strict protocols and a tight 7-day deadline, highlighting clear authority. Your supervisor briefs you on the confidential internal review, emphasizing the authority and confidentiality required for this sensitive assignment. The initial notes outline key findings and protocols, each point marked with a supervisor's signature for accountability. You receive the confidential file containing the audit record, and the supervisor's gaze holds the weight of systemic expectations. You jot down the review parameters, aware that every detail must align with the internal system's established guidelines. The confidential stamp signifies restricted access, a reminder of the hierarchy and consequences tied to this internal document. The supervisor explains the strict protocols for accessing digital records, ensuring every action is traceable within the system. The access log reveals a chain of entries, each tied to specific authorities and actions within the internal network. You inquire about the review's scope, and the supervisor's response underscores the systemic pressure to adhere to deadlines. The authority figure reminds you of the potential consequences if the review deviates from established internal procedures. A tight deadline looms with only 48 hours remaining, adding pressure to the confidential assignment's completion. You exit the briefing, the files wait a constant reminder of the silent decision-making process ahead in the system. You begin the examination, each page of the confidential file holding system flaws that require careful internal scrutiny. The redactions indicate sensitive information, masking details that could influence the review's outcome within hierarchy. You absorb the initial findings, noticing inconsistencies that surface silently, building pressure as no one speaks of them. The organizational chart outlines the chain of command, a visual map of the authority structure governing this internal review. You document initial observations, aware that each note contributes to the report that will move through the system's channels. A call reminds you of the impending deadline, reinforcing the authority's expectation for timely completion of the confidential review. Past reports sit archived, silent witnesses to previous decisions and consequences that echo through the internal system. You pause, feeling the weight of the silent decision ahead, knowing the consequences will ripple through the system's hierarchy. You uncover a significant system flaw in the audit record, noting the status change that raises critical questions about internal consistency and authority. The annotated audit record highlights discrepancies that must be addressed within the tight review deadline set by the internal system. You consider the chain of command, aware that reporting this inconsistency could trigger consequences up the authority ladder in the system. The deadline approaches with only 24 hours left, intensifying the pressure to complete the confidential internal review on schedule. You finalize the initial assessment, preparing to transition into the detailed examination phase mandated by strict system protocols and authority. The examination begins, where each document holds silent system flaws under the weight of internal scrutiny and mounting pressure. You dive into the report draft, the redactions masking key details that influence the review's outcome in the silent system hierarchy. Archived internal documents stand as evidence of past decisions, their consequences echoing through the current review process and system flaws. You identify a significant inconsistency in the financial records, a system flaw that no one has spoken about openly under authority pressure. Documenting the inconsistency, you feel the mounting pressure as the decision point nears, within the hierarchical authority and internal review. The digital log entry captures every action, a silent witness to the internal review's progress and potential system issues under scrutiny. Another reminder call goes unanswered, the authority's expectation for silence and compliance pressing down on the review with inevitable consequences. You take a momentary break, but the weight of the silent decision and its consequences lingers, unavoidable in the system's pressure. The unsigned decision memo awaits your final approval, a document that will set consequences in motion once filed through internal channels. A second inconsistency surfaces in the procurement logs, adding to the pressure as no one speaks to clarify the system flaws. You compile the initial findings into a report draft, aware that each bullet point could trigger internal audits or reviews with authority. The isolated office environment emphasizes the solitary nature of the internal review, with pressure building in silence under system hierarchy. With the examination half done, you prepare to present findings, knowing the authority will demand swift and silent resolution to system issues. The physical report emerges, a tangible record of system flaws that will now move through the internal channels for decision and consequence. You set aside the completed examination notes, the pressure mounting as the vert phase approaches, with inevitable consequences in the system. You verify each finding against the source documents, ensuring accuracy before the authority reviews the system flaws in the internal audit. Redactions in the report indicate sensitive internal information, a standard practice for confidential audits under system authority and review protocols. An inquiry from the hierarchy goes unanswered, maintaining the required silence for this internal review's integrity under mounting pressure. You gather supplementary files to support the audit findings, adding depth to the system analysis as consequences loom. The workspace becomes a map of inconsistencies, each document a piece in the puzzle of internal system issues under review. You draft a message to schedule the closed meeting, where the decision on system consequences will be finalized by authority. An interruption from a colleague tests the confidentiality of the review, but you maintain focus on the authority's protocol and hierarchy. The signature field on the decision memo remains empty, a silent reminder of the impending verdict and its consequences in the system. You provide a status update without revealing details, adhering to the internal system's need for discretion and hierarchical pressure. With the examination nearly complete, you prepare the final file for presentation, each page a testament to silent system flaws. The clock ticks towards the deadline, emphasizing the tight schedule imposed by the authority for this internal review and decision. You secure the digital evidence, a precautionary step in the audit process to prevent data loss under system pressure and review. Understanding the chain of command is crucial, as the decision will flow through the hierarchy, with inevitable consequences for system issues. The official seal awaits application, a symbol of finality. Once the audit report is approved by the internal authority for filing, you confirm the closed meeting time, ensuring all parties are prepared for the verdict on system issues and their consequences under authority. The confidential file is secured for transport, ready to be presented in the meeting that will decide the system's fate and consequences. The isolation of the audit process is palpable, with the building silent and the weight of decision resting on your shoulders in the system. You exit the office, carrying the file that holds the key to internal reviews and the consequences that will follow through hierarchy. At the threshold of the verdict meeting, the pressure peaks, knowing the authority awaits your findings on system flaws and their review. You join the closed meeting, where the silent examination ends and the decision on internal consequences begins, under system authority and hierarchy. The closed meeting commences, where the internal audit findings will be presented and the final decision under authority is made, setting consequences in motion. You present the audit report, detailing system flaws found during the review, while the hierarchy observes in silence, pressure building for the decision. The decision memos await signatures, each representing a point in the system where authority must approve or deny based on the audit's internal review. The supervisor questions specific findings, emphasizing the need for accuracy in the report before the final decision on consequences is reached under system pressure. Time is limited, with the deadline approaching, each minute increasing the tension in the closed meeting, as the decision must be made promptly. Documents are circulated among attendees, each reviewing the audit details silently, acknowledging the system issues without verbal confirmation, maintaining procedural discretion. The moment to sign approaches, with the weight of the decision causing hesitation, as the authority's expectation and system consequences loom large. Redactions in the report indicate sensitive information withheld, a standard practice in internal reviews to protect aspects while exposing system flaws. You visualize the decision hierarchy, mapping out how the approval will flow through the system, ensuring all understand the chain of command and its consequences. Authority intervenes, directing the discussion towards the key points, emphasizing that the decision must be made today to meet the internal review deadline. The audit log awaits today's entry, which will record the decision and its justification, a permanent record in the system for future reference and consequences. Digital evidence is presented, highlighting inconsistencies in the system data, supporting the findings and strengthening the case for the decision under review. Preparations are made for the signing ceremony, with the official seal and stamp ready to validate the decision once all agree on the audit outcomes. The collective focus is on the file, with every individual in the hierarchy present to witness the decision that will set system consequences in motion. You voice the proposed verdict based on the audit findings, detailing the consequences for the system flaws identified during the internal review process. Consensus builds as attendees acknowledge the findings, with the hierarchy showing signs of accepting the decision, moving towards final approval under authority. The meeting drags on, with physical signs of fatigue, yet the procedural need to complete the decision keeps everyone focused on the system review. Authority prepares to sign, but seeks final confirmation from you, ensuring that all audit points are addressed and the decision is justified within the system. You provide the needed assurance, highlighting the critical evidence which allows the supervisor to proceed with signing the decision that will enforce system consequences. The signature is applied, marking the final decision in the audit process, with the hierarchy watching as consequences are now set to unfold through the system. The signature is now complete, finalizing the decision that will enforce consequences throughout the internal system authority and review. Authority hands you the finalized document, signaling that the decision is now in your hands to proceed with the next steps in the system. The decision memo rests on the table, a tangible record of the audit outcome that will guide future actions and consequences within the hierarchy. You file the signed decision into the main audit folder, ensuring all related documents are together for proper archiving and internal reference. Additional notes are included in the file, documenting key points from the discussion to support the decision in the system review process. The audit file is now complete, stamped and classified, ready to be archived as a permanent part of the internal decision system. You update the digital audit record, inputting the finding status and decision to ensure the system log reflects today's critical review outcome. A hard copy of the decision memo is printed, providing a physical backup for the archives and distribution within the authority chain. The duplicate memo serves as evidence of the decision, ready for filing in separate locations to prevent loss in the system. The clerk accepts the memo for archiving, ensuring it is stored correctly in the system's records for future audit and consequence tracking. The action is logged manually, documenting who handled the decision and when, adding another layer to the system's accountability framework. The digital log confirms the filing, with the entry now part of the electronic trail that monitors all system activities and decisions. Authority formally ends the meeting, signaling that the verdict phase is complete and the consequences are now set to be implemented. The hierarchy disperses, each member carrying the weight of the decision back to their roles, ready to enact the system consequences. The meeting room empties, leaving behind the physical evidence of the decision that will soon ripple through the internal system structure. You reflect on the decision made, considering how the consequences will unfold and impact the system you are responsible for auditing. A call comes in regarding the implementation of the decision, requiring immediate attention to ensure the system adjustments begin as planned. You provide guidance on enforcing the decision, detailing the steps needed to address the system flaw identified during the review. The deadline for the decision implementation is today, marked clearly, emphasizing the tight timeline set by the internal authority. With the call ended, you finalize the verdict phase, ready to move forward as the consequences start to take effect in the system. The decision is now filed, and the system begins to absorb the silent consequences of the internal audit review. You carry the decision file through the hallway, moving towards the archives where it will be stored permanently in the system records. The confidential stamp marks the file as restricted, ensuring only authorized personnel can access the internal decision details. You reach the archives, where the file will be logged and stored as part of the system's permanent accountability framework. The clerk takes the file, preparing to document the handover in the manual log to track the decision's journey through the system. The archive stamp is applied, officially marking the file as stored and setting the date for future audit and review cycles. The manual log entry is completed, adding another layer to system's trail that monitors all decisions and their consequences. The digital log updates instantly, confirming the archiving action and integrating it into the electronic system for real-time monitoring. You return to your desk, the weight of the decision evident as you move through the hierarchy, each member aware of the consequences. The office continues its routine, but the decision now influences the system, with adjustments beginning to ripple through the internal structure. An email arrives outlining the first actions required to enforce the decision, setting the timeline for system changes based on the audit. The memo specifies the consequences, with clear steps and authority signatures, ensuring the decision is implemented correctly across the system. Redactions in the memo indicate sensitive information, while the approved status confirms the hierarchy's endorsement of the decision consequences. You discuss the implementation with a colleague, ensuring alignment on how to address the system flaws identified during the review process. The quiet discussion highlights the pressure within the system, as members coordinate to manage the consequences of the silent decision. You prepare a summary report for the next audit cycle, documenting the decision and its expected impact on the internal system structure. The report draft captures the procedural details, ready to be filed as part of the ongoing review to monitor system integrity. You submit the report, finalizing the documentation and ensuring it enters the system for future reference and accountability checks. The acknowledgement email confirms receipt, with the hierarchy chain visible, reinforcing the system's layered authority over the decision consequences. The system flowchart updates, visually representing how the decision now flows through the hierarchy, setting the stage for ongoing internal review.